guys. This is great. Thank you so much, Steve. So I got to tell you, I'm so excited to talk about this today. Purpose and partnerships is my area, and I just love talking about anything with a purpose. I've been at National Geographic for 11 and a half years, and it has never been such a fun time. It's definitely been the highlight in my career over the last 18 months or so. We're just at an all-time high. And this idea of purpose has also hit an all-time high. Steve touched on it a little bit earlier about, brands needing to mean something to consumers or else they just don't care. And so now we're seeing brands come to us to say, help us mean something to people. And so it's just such a fun process to help them do that. So I am going to take you through a few case studies and a few more kind of consumer research insights about this. But before I do that, I want to just give you a little bit of a setup of the National Geographic brand. Some of you may know some of this, some of you may not, but I think it's important to give you that context before we jump into the case studies. Now I'm going to have an issue with this. Okay, the big one. Here we go. Okay, so this is a funny slide, right? When I first started working at National Geographic and I would tell people, where I worked, they would say, oh my God, my grandmother has a whole bunch of those issues in her attic. And it's really great that people collect them and save them, but it's not really, the relevant story that you want people to have. So now, 9 times out of 10, when I'm talking about the brand, people say, I follow you on Instagram. And that is an enormous leap, right, within just 10 years. And we like to say we're moving from reverence, which we've always had, to relevance, which is much more important in today's age. So here's a quick video. We love our videos at National Geographic.
A good story can change the world. Not always a story about something good, but a good story. Told the right way and for the right reasons, its impact can be profound, empowering the people it touches and creating an opportunity for change. We've been telling these kinds of stories for a long time. "130 years ago, National Geographic was founded with the simple notion that understanding our world can help to change it for the better. There's a lot of world left to understand today, but there was even more of it back then. So we gathered up the most advanced tools of the time and gave them to a group of explorers to search the world for that understanding. These explorers were carefully chosen for their bravery and their passionate curiosity. And in their adventures in the years to come, there were many firsts.
The fascinating thing is that so many of the gestures used by the chimps are the same as ours.
Their stories were brought back and shared, and a community was formed around them, connected through their own curiosity and hungry for more.
This sucker exists!
Before there was an internet or Instagram, National Geographic brought them the world and everything in it every month. And in meeting these new people and places, and being moved by their stories, that community started to care. Because when you understand something on that emotional level, you feel compelled to do more than just read or watch. And when a whole community shares that same sense of purpose, amazing things happen. Today we are connected to an unrivaled network of fans and explorers, across more means of communication than our founders could have imagined. We are still invested in bold people and the power of change, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, protecting, educating, inspiring and empowering a global community to make a difference.
Today I'm on assignment for National Geographic.
Nearly a third of our profits go back into the field, giving grants to new generations of explorers, who in turn tell the stories that make us care and make the discoveries that advance humankind. This is our purpose. There are problems we need to solve, but the story we're all working together to tell is a good one. One that's about shared purpose and the wonder of possibility. Our compassionate curiosity has taken us all this far, and we believe it is the very thing that will drive us further.
So we like to say we're in the business of saving the planet, which is no small thing, right? And it mentioned this in the video, but our business structure is that we have a for-profit and a nonprofit entity, and that 27% of our net proceeds go back to funding the nonprofit. And then that funds all of these great explorers and scientists that you saw in that video, and they become the storytellers that go out through our media. So it creates this amazing virtuous cycle. And the storytelling is such a big part of it. All of us in the room are storytellers, and it makes us believe that, people can if they understand the world, then they can transform it, right? And it's so important. These are some of the issues that we've done, around critical issues. Our most recent is this plastics issue. If you haven't seen it, it's unbelievable. Single topic issue on plastics. And I have to tell you, and this is kind of starting to be a first in my, being in sales and being in my career, that clients are starting to reach out to us. Which is just, it's kind of amazing to have them reach out to us and say, I love the work that you're doing, how can we become a part of it? And I'm not making that up, it's happening more and more. And this is also, we not only tell stories around environment, which is a lot of what people expect, but this is a single topic we did on race recently, which this is the expression across the globe. We are a global brand, and this resonated in a huge way. So from a partner perspective, so we reach 760 million consumers a month across all of our platforms. And partners, depending on what they want to do, sometimes they want to do global platforms, and I'll show you some of those case studies, and some want to do more local, and we can kind of target accordingly. And our big story is on social. It's pretty crazy. So we have 412 million followers across all of our platforms, but look at this slide here. This is the top 20, I don't know if you guys can see this. This is the top 20 accounts on Instagram. These are all celebrities except for two. The two brands on here are Nat Geo at 14 and Nike at 16. And so this is the kind of stuff that gives us hope in the world, that we just passed Nicki Minaj the other day. We're still behind the Jenners, but Kendall Jenner is still before us. But come on, this is National Geographic, right? Between Nicki Minaj and Kendall Jenner. This is awesome. So this does give us hope in the world, and it says something about what is resonating with consumers today. Why is National Geographic, doing that? Well, it's because it resonates in purpose. And you might say, so who are these consumers that care so much? So we call them kind of the modern day thought leader. And this ranges, it's so interesting. Even from the print perspective, we have two segments that keep growing, and it's the millennials and it's C-suite. So, but across that, it's all people who care about the world and want to understand their place in it and want to make a difference. And a big part of our ethos is that we are constantly innovating, right? So we're 130 years old. We like to think of ourselves as a 130-year-old startup. We had an early entry into cable, and we're leveraging that more and more now that we have this partnership with 21st Century Fox. We're pioneering, obviously, on social, and if anybody wants to hear our story about how we did the Instagram account, it's a good one, I'll tell you after. And we're still investing in print, interestingly. We just relaunched the magazine with new print stock. We're completely still innovating there. And we're really diversifying across revenue streams, right? So we have all of our media assets, but we also have consumer experiences like travel, where we have consumers go on assignment with us, with experts. We have Basecamp, our custom studio. We have all these different ways, and our sales team is empowered to sell across everything. So we have a very, very consultative model. We go to a brand and say, what are you looking to do? What kind of engagement are you trying to make? And then we pull from all of these assets and create a partnership. And our value proposition is really one around content, right? Whether it's aligning with our content or creating content for our partners, scale, and of course, purpose. It's infused in everything we do. These are a few examples. Microsoft wanting to lean into STEM and inspire girls to get into STEM careers. Nike talking about the power of human ingenuity. GlaxoSmithKline wanting to solve global health issues. Or we have Stella, solving the world water crisis. And I have to tell you, purpose is in every conversation I have with partners at this point. Every single conversation. It's incredible. And they have to do this. Why? Because consumers are evolving. And again, Steve did a great job talking about this, but we're seeing this too. We went from a place where people were only collecting things, right? And then they moved towards collecting experiences, which I think people still do, to really seeking personal growth. This is a much bigger kind of elevated concept. And when you look at people they're expecting brands to have a viewpoint and to stand for something. And you can see here the younger generation even expects it more and more. And not only that they want them to stand for something, but it has to be true. They can't just go out and say something. They actually have to do something. And they have to be transparent about it. And these are very, very big things, and I think companies are having a really hard time with these. And this, I think, is also interesting. 80% of people are expecting, they're expecting companies to improve the economic and social environment in their community, which used to be a job of the government, right? But now they're looking at companies to do this job for them. So companies really have to step up to the plate. It's no longer kind of a thing on the side that the CSR department gets to talk about, right? It has to be infused in everything that they do. So this is interesting too. So and this is probably nothing that you guys don't know, but the younger generation feels entitled to make a difference too, right? Like, so when they're going to look for a job, they want to be part of a company that means something. So when we're crafting partnerships more and more, so one of the goals that companies are setting forth is, you have to help me with pipeline development. You have to help me to increase kind of our talent pool. And we want people coming out of college saying, I want to work for that company versus just go to Facebook and Google and all the cool companies. So this is something that we're being asked more and more every day because of this, because millennials and the next generation want to make a difference. And this is just a bunch of quotes. We've all seen this from Starbucks, AB InBev, Amazon, PepsiCo. These are companies leading the way and having leaders say, we all have to do more. Okay, so from a National Geographic perspective, this is how we look at partnerships, kind of in different pillars or buckets. One is brand defining. This is where a company comes to us and says, help us elevate our brand and tell our brand story. Help us do that. The second is really when that purpose or impact, when that cause message is the thing at the forefront. And then enterprise, this is something kind of, I think, unique to our business model, is where a company comes in and funds something on the nonprofit side, but then also wants to storytell around it and engage consumers. So they kind of go across platform. These are mostly very long-term, multi-year, expected to make long-term impact. So I'm going to show you another video really quickly. This is just a range of our partnerships. Need some volume. Thank you.
3, 2, 1.
There's so much more to do. Our future depends on it.
Every view of the Rockies gives me endless inspiration.
The tip of New Zealand's North Island, where you can see two oceans meet.
I like to do it all, and it helps to have a car that gets me anywhere and everywhere I need to go.
I want to make sure that girls know that STEM, science, all of these things are for them. We want you to feel empowered. All right.
Pop the champagne, start a fire. Put your hands up, raise them higher. Yeah, we're on top.
Airbnb and National Geographic teamed up to offer the ultimate eclipse experience.
Live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and Periscope.
Oh, man! This is so amazing!
We are knocking on the door of history here.
So music is good in the morning, right? Okay, so to go through the first one, I'm just going to give you an example of each one of these. So brand defining is Nike. So you just saw a little bit of clips. But Nike was working on a project, and this is an instance where they had been working on it before we got involved. And they were looking at the concept of, is it possible to break the 2-hour marathon? Is this something that humans can do? So they were looking at, if we set up the perfect scenario, the perfect place with the perfect altitude, the perfect climate, pick the runners, pair them with our scientists, train them for a year, you know, the whole thing. Is it possible? So they had been working on this, and then they got to the point that they wanted the storytelling partner to come on board and then ultimately create long-form content around this, right? A documentary. So they were, of course, in discussions with, you know, people that you can imagine, maybe in the sports arena and that kind of thing. And then National Geographic came along, and we actually won this business because it was looked at as a human ingenuity story, right? It's a human potential story. You know, when you think about it, why is this any different from when we tell stories about, you know, our adventurer Corey Richards climbing to Mount Everest without supplemental oxygen? It's something about human potential. Also, if you remember that social slide with us and Nike, they were very much aware of our power in social, so they wanted to tap into that too. So this is what we did for Breaking 2.
When you look across sport, the one obvious barrier is the 2-hour marathon.
It's not the absolute numbers that matter. It's picking the goal that you think is impossible. It's this journey of taking 3 guys, all of whom are really talented, and telling them to do something that's impossible. We're taking the latest advances in training, latest advances in technology and algorithms and mathematics, and we're going to tell these guys, you're going to go for it from the gun. And that is a recipe for greatness.
It's about human endeavour. Why would you try to climb Everest? Why would you try to go to the moon? It's about learning what our capabilities are.
That video. I've seen it like 100 times and it just never gets old for me. But you know, this is an example, again, going back to, you know, brands needing to stand for something. There was not one ad, like a Nike ad in this whole program, right? This was just them defining who they are. So the way we executed this, so there was obviously a race day, right? But there was a lot leading up to it. So we activated a lot of just tune-in and engagement beforehand across all of our channels. On race day, we really went heavy on live. So that's another trend that we're seeing in social, is that we're just pushing a lot in live programming. So we had our photographers and talent on the ground broadcasting live. And then post-race, we ran a 2-hour documentary on our network. It's still on YouTube. You should check it out if you have not seen it. It is incredible. I am not a runner, and I cried. And if you're curious, they didn't do it. So they missed it by like 25 seconds. So yeah, but anyway, it's still the most magnificent story, and it was really, really incredible. And, you know, it had huge social reach, 230 million, you know, total across all platforms. Okay, purpose and impact. So this is one of my favorite projects. It's called Chasing Genius. And this is something where, you know, this started a year ago. We've done one iteration with GSK and one with, we just finished up with Sprint. So this was really around this idea. So if you remember that slide with the millennials kind of believing that they can change the world, it's tapping into that. Plus our social reach. We said to ourselves, why not give these people an opportunity to solve the world's greatest problems? Why does it have to come from an Elon Musk or someone, you know, like that? It can come from anybody, these ideas. So what if we give them challenges and then give prize money and align with partners who share that same purpose? So for GlaxoSmithKline, it was global health. With Sprint, it was all around unlimited innovation. So, you know, what can you do if people had unlimited connectivity in every part of the world? What could they accomplish? So here's, I told you I have a lot of video.
We believe transformational ideas can come from anywhere, from anyone. That's why we created Chasing Genius.
Ready for launch.
A purpose-driven platform rooted in consumer insight, giving small ideas big voices, powered by the #1 brand on social media.
Whoa, this is actually happening.
We created a community inspiring over 1,000 ideas, gathering millions of impressions and incredible custom articles. But the real power behind Chasing Genius means inspiring people to dream without limits. Sharing ideas to improve our freshwater lakes, help children with autism, and revolutionize medical care around the world.
There's so much more to do.
Our community rallied behind the idea of unlimited possibility.
We didn't intend to have a big idea, it just happened.
Thank you, Sprint, for chasing genius with us. Together, we're finding solutions to change the world.
That was the thank you video that we sent to them. So I'm going to skip ahead here because Steve just gave me the 5-minute mark. So what was interesting here, and I just wanted to note, is that Sprint really wanted to do this with us because they wanted to align with innovation. They wanted to break through. They're in a very competitive category, so it's hard for them to break through. And while we did do all of that with aligning them with Chasing Genius, and I think this is true for most of the purpose-driven partnerships we work on, they want to align with purpose, but at the same time, they still want to kind of tell their story. And in Sprint's case, they wanted to really tell the story of what the hell is 5G? Everybody's talking about it. What is it? In their case, they have a lot of spectrum network that they wanted to explain. And we did a lot of custom articles for them to explain this. And one of the best compliments we got, we were actually at their headquarters taking them through a mid-campaign recap. And they said one of their engineers who had been there for 20 years or so stopped them in the hallway and said, "Oh my God, I love those Nat Geo articles because I try to explain the network all the time to people and I can't do it." And that article just did so well. So we're actually looking, it was kind of a surprise thing because we thought of these articles kind of a side little project, but they ended up being one of the real, real success metrics for the client. We're looking at how to do that more. I'm going to probably skip Microsoft. You saw it in the video before. This was where the client had a project. They had Make What's Next, which is a STEM initiative. They wanted to inspire girls to get into STEM careers. And they came to us to say, how can you help us amplify it? So we partnered we got 6 of our most amazing explorers, female explorers who are in STEM careers. So you see Jedidah Eisler there. She was one of our emerging explorers, and she's an astrophysicist. So we sent them to the stores, Microsoft stores. They talked to all the girls. We created content and distributed it across our network. And we did a big social takeover. We do this with partners on big social days. So International Women's Day, we did a takeover for them. And just super quick, the last one, enterprise. I won't go too deep into this because I think it's very specific to our business structure. But this is, again, where there is not an ad involved in this partnership. This is completely through a grant from United Technologies, from more of their CSR side. But they wanted to talk about sustainable cities. So we created a platform called Urban Expeditions. It's a co-branded editorial project. And it has basically 3 parts to it. So they fund projects on the nonprofit side to do work in this area, and then we do storytelling. We highlight cities across the world who are doing innovative things and bringing solutions forward, and then we have global events, which really target influencers. And UTC, if you don't know UTC, it's one of the top Fortune 50 companies. They're huge. They're on the GE level, but nobody knows them. So they're an example of someone who wants help elevating their brand and being an influencer, so that they can bring talent into the mix. Steve, how am I doing? Do I have a minute or no? Okay. Okay. So this is just. In terms of when we do partnerships and what we learn and what we take away, I think more and more because we build partnerships from the ground up with partners and we kind of have that consultative approach. And all of these are obvious, by the way, but nonetheless, they keep coming back. The first one is just getting expectations early. What are the KPIs? What is the budget? Like, let's just have that conversation as early as possible. What are the expectations? And, steering clients to also, you have to understand the client's metrics, but also then design it. Now that we're in this very social world, we also have to really lean on the insights we have about what consumers want so that it'll perform well. So that's always a trick of getting the consumer insight to marry up with the client's interests. And one of these, this is so funny that this took us so long to learn, but we just developed a team of, really high-level project managers to manage these types of projects. Before it was, there were a lot of different producers involved, and the salesperson would stay involved, and it just took all of our time. So now we have a team that's really activating at a high level, allowing the sales team to continue to develop new partnerships, which has been key. There's a lot of other learnings, but we can talk about it during Q&A.
Tammy, thank you very much. And I want to leave time. Does anybody have any questions of Tammy? She's going to be leading a roundtable, but I did want to leave some time for questions because this, at least in my mind, raises a whole host of questions of how you execute this stuff.
Any questions?
Could you give us some examples of the range and the types of KPIs that brands are expecting from this? Because clearly it's got to go beyond impressions. They must be looking, there must be some other different kinds of brand metrics that they're looking for out of this.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes, sometimes it is measured on just an impression level, but a lot of the times it's measured on more and more brand lift. People want to see how it elevated the brand because that's why they're doing it. So that's something that we're really working on, is how to have brand lift measurements incorporated into all of our partnerships. It used to be something we would wait for a brand to ask us for at the last minute after the deal was closed. Oh, can you do a brand lift study? We're now trying to incorporate that into everything we do. And the challenge at this point, and because we're cross-platform, is how do you do that in a cohesive way, right? How do you measure it across what happens on television versus what happens in social and give them a kind of a cohesive lift? But I think that that's the metric that we're dealing with more.
Does the impact move beyond, from what you've seen so far, does the impact move beyond sort of top-line reputation metrics and actually start moving into some of the lower metrics like intent to buy that's associated with brands like a Nike or a Microsoft?
We haven't done it on these, but I think that's what we're trying to move towards, is how do you get those kinds of insights? Because I think we've always lived at the very top high-level funnel, and we're trying to kind of get lower down a little bit.
And one last question I have about assembling the team. So you have a separate, talk about how this is structured and staffed and whether it's sustainable at a specific level. I mean, these are the kinds of projects that traditionally have challenged publishers because they're elastic. You never, maintaining a sustainable model with consistent staffing is very difficult when you have these one-off projects that are following one after each other. So how have you resolved that in terms of establishing a staff that's sizable, that's elastic according to project, that sort of thing?
Well, the point I just touched on, having those high-level project managers who can run a project and be kind of take it out of the hands of sales and have it be such an amazing experience for clients is key, because then there's renewals. And we're now that we've implemented these project managers, now we're getting more and more renewals, which is so important, because to build these things, the lead time is so long, and then to build them is so much work. What's that?
How long is the lead time?
Well, I mean, like the Nike one was probably like a year in the making. Microsoft was a quick shot. It was like a month that they gave us. That was not an ideal scenario. But a lot of times I would say it's at least 6 months or so that you're kind of selling the idea, crafting it, getting it done. And so the last thing you want it to be is a one-off, right? So the more and more we can have these renewals and these kind of longer-term partnerships is obviously better.
Hang on.
Hi, it's Bill Ullman from Smithsonian.
Hi.
I'm sure everyone's asking the same question that I'm going to ask, which is, it's great when you're National Geographic and can pull this off. How does the rest of us do it? But in all seriousness, I mean, in a sense, I know I've been in this space before. The money that goes into these is not traditional advertising money. This is not an ad sales gig where someone's going to go out and call in a client and they're going to get an RFP. You've got to work it. And the question, I guess, for all of us would be, like, how do you find the point in the oyster where you can pop it open? Who do you call? How do you reach out? Do you have a hit list? When you get one, who makes the first call? How do you get in touch with these people so they'll come to us too?
That's such a good question. Oh my gosh, we could spend a whole hour on that. First of all, a few things in there. Some of these did come out of an RFP. So I think the Microsoft one came out of an RFP. Sprint came out of an RFP, interestingly enough. Most of them, some of them do and some of them don't. And I got to tell you, 10 years ago when I started, the group publisher at the time said, this is going to be the hardest job you've ever had, because everybody loves the brand, but nobody wants to buy it. And it has been that way for a long time. So I feel, this is new for us, that people are really, excited to buy. So I get it. What was the other question? Oh, developing. So, it's hard. We try to really keep our, finger on the pulse of what clients are doing. So, reading, when, like with plastics, now we're seeing all of these companies come out and make these announcements around plastics. And so you read that name in the paper who's saying something, and you reach out to them and say, hey, I saw what you're doing around plastics. I want to talk about our initiative that we're doing and see how we can do something together. I think that's how you'd make a timely connection versus just cold calling out of willy-nilly. I always find, and I always tell the salespeople, whenever you're at your desk and lacking inspiration, do research. Find out what's going on at the company about what they're doing, how they're trying to break through, and then we can go talk about how we can help. Versus just, I think it's very hard to kind of cold call out of just nowhere. But
Tammy's going to continue this in the roundtable so you can drill into even more. Tammy, thank you very much. That was great.